Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. About a week to go for Donald Trump's tariffs to kick in. India, like the rest of the world, is bracing for impact. India is also making hectic moves. Talks, visits, lowering tariffs, everything is being done to avert the blow. Tonight, we'll look at the high-level engagements with Washington and the possibility of India opening up to China if Trump strikes hard. Meanwhile, in the Ukraine war, multiple rounds of talks between Ukraine and the US and Russia and the US. The focus now is on a Black Sea truce. In West Asia, Trump is bombing the Houthis in the hope of resuming Red Sea shipping. In the US, the president has given a lifeline to Boeing with a deal to build America's sixth-generation stealth fighter. Can Boeing deliver? Why has Europe issued a travel advisory against the United States? As protests erupt across Turkey, will Erdogan get away with a political coup? The race for 6G is heating up. We'll tell you who's in the lead at the moment. Is the US set to recognize the Taliban and reopen its embassy in Kabul? Why Usha Vance's visit to Greenland is being seen as a hostile move? And what is Apple TV Plus doing wrong? It is losing $1 billion every year. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Iran says it is open to indirect nuclear talks with the US. President Donald Trump wants negotiations for a new nuclear deal, but Tehran has ruled out direct talks with Washington. In 2018, Trump withdrew the US from a landmark agreement on Iran's nuclear program. Brazil's president starts a 4-day state visit to Japan. A 100-strong business delegation is accompanying him. US tariffs are pushing countries to recalibrate their trade ties. Recently, Donald Trump imposed additional tariffs on steel. Brazil is the second-largest exporter of steel to the United States. Prime Minister Narendra Modi to visit Sri Lanka next week. He will meet the Sri Lankan president to finalize key agreements. President Anura Dissanayake visited New Delhi in December last year. In January, he travelled to Beijing, the island nation's largest lender. India has been concerned about China's growing influence in Sri Lanka. Mozambique's president meets the main opposition leader to ease tensions. This follows months of clashes between the protesters and the security forces. The violence started after last October's disputed election. Since then, gas-rich Mozambique has been battling political turmoil. And a Bangladeshi court orders the seizure of cricketer Shakib Al Hasan's assets. It is the latest legal trouble for the sports star over his links with former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. He is a former lawmaker from Hasina's party. Shakib is also facing murder investigations related to the protests last year.
India charges us massive tariffs, massive. You can't even sell anything into India. It's very unfair. India charges us auto tariffs higher than 100%. That's reciprocal, back and forth. Whatever they tax us, we will tax them.
April 2 is fast approaching, and with it are Trump's tariffs. Traders and economists have been dreading this date. India, like many other trade partners of the US, is on the tenterhooks. Will these tariffs force New Delhi to pivot to China? That's what we'll discuss tonight. But first, let's look at what is coming. This is the threat that Trump has been making for weeks now.
So on April 2nd, I wanted to make it April 1st, but I didn't want to be accused of April Fool's Day. April 2nd, reciprocal tariffs kick in. And whatever they tariff us, other countries, we will tariff them.
What they charge us, we will charge them. That is Trump's logic, and this approach has shaped all his moves. He is targeting both friends and foes, including US neighbors like Mexico and Canada. America's biggest trading partner and rival China and America's old ally Europe. They've all been slapped with reciprocal tariffs. And by the looks of it, India could be next. Trump has complained a lot about India. He's been doing it since his first term in office, although then, during his first term, India managed to avoid the tariffs. But this time, the situation feels different. There is anxiety both in Washington and New Delhi, because this would be the biggest expansion of Trump's tariffs.
We're going to be getting back some of the wealth that very, very foolish presidents gave away because they had no clue what they were doing. And April 2nd, I would have made it April 1st, but you know what April 1st is, April Fool's Day. I figured, I don't like doing it, but I made it April 2nd. But it's a liberation day for our country.
He's calling it Liberation Day. Here's how India is preparing for it. Prime Minister Modi held a meeting today. And two key ministers were part of this meeting. S. Jaishankar, who's India's External Affairs Minister, and Piyush Goyal, who's India's Commerce Minister. They discussed the impending US tariffs. It's not clear what they concluded with, but reports say that India is looking at a range of options. And one of them, interestingly, is opening up to China. That is one of the options. India could reduce curbs on Chinese trade and investments. Broadly, consensus is building on three proposals. First, a reduction of tariffs on Chinese imports. Second, fewer visa restrictions on China. And third, allowing some Chinese apps to operate in India again. Remember, these curbs were brought in after Galwan, after the clashes in Galwan, the border clashes in 2020, when Indian and Chinese troops came to blows. India had restricted Chinese imports back then, but now New Delhi could dilute some of these restrictions or lift the curbs entirely. The extent of India's concessions will depend on the severity of Trump's tariff blow. Reports say India will respond proportionally. Last year, India exported $74 billion worth of goods to the United States. $74 billion. So sweeping tariffs would hit a large chunk of India's trade. And if that happens, India's options would narrow. It could raise taxes on American imports as a response, and it could tilt towards China. India could tilt towards China. It all depends on how far Trump is willing to escalate the trade war. Now, reports also say that the US president is rethinking some of his plans, which apparently he always is. He favors a more targeted approach and not blanket tariffs on all trade partners. What does that mean? What is this targeted approach? On the 2nd of April, some countries or some blocs could be excluded. Or so they hope. Because with Trump, nothing is certain. Until he announces it himself, it is not a given. And even then, he is prone to changing his position. Reports say Trump is yet to make a decision. And India is actively engaging with his administration, keeping the focus on the trade relationship. External Affairs Minister Jaishankar raised it in January. He was in Washington, D.C. for Trump's inauguration. There he met the new U.S. Foreign Minister Marco Rubio, or the Secretary of State as they call him. It was Rubio's first official meeting in that role, and it was with the Indian Minister S. Jaishankar, which was a message in itself. Those talks led to the Indian Prime Minister's visit to Washington, D.C. in February. Prime Minister Modi met Trump at the White House. He was among the first world leaders to be welcomed by the new U.S. president. A potential trade deal was discussed between India and the U.S., and both leaders agreed to speed up talks.
Today, the U.S. Trade deficit with India is almost $100 billion. And Prime Minister Modi and I have agreed that we'll begin negotiations to address the long-running disparities that should have been taken care of over the last 4 years, but they didn't do that, in the U.S.-India trading relationship, with the goal of signing an agreement.
So the two leaders met early in Trump's term. It set the tone for more engagements. It triggered a wave of high-level visits. This month, another top Indian minister was in the U.S., Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal. He held talks with Trump's trade officials. New Delhi also hosted senior members from Donald Trump's team. One of them was Christy Canagallo, the acting deputy secretary at the U.S. Homeland Security. This visit took place in February. Then last week, Tulsi Gabbard was here. Gabbard is the Director of National Intelligence. Tomorrow, Brendan Lynch is set to arrive in New Delhi. He is a top U.S. trade representative. Next month, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance is expected to visit India along with his wife Usha Vance. So you can see the level of exchange at the top. And these visits are an encouraging sign. They show commitment in this relationship from both sides. But India should not mistake them for a trade breakthrough. That is not a given. Trump could easily change his mind tomorrow. Consider this. After raising tariffs on Chinese goods, Donald Trump is planning a meeting with Xi Jinping. Reports say the groundwork is being laid, and that sums up the US president's modus operandi. He will wage a trade war and initiate dialogue at the same time. And the world has no choice but to play along. All eyes are on the sprawling Ritz Hotel in Riyadh. It wears a deserted look today, but inside, you could bet things are hectic. Because this is where the crucial Ukraine peace talks are happening. All three delegations are here. The American team, the Russian team, and the Ukrainian team, all of them under the same roof. These delegations are discussing the technical side of things. They have the green light from their respective presidents, so their job is to finalize the fine print. And how's it going? Well, the Americans and the Ukrainians met yesterday. Kiev called it a constructive talk. President Zelensky later released a statement. He urged the world to build pressure on Russia.
There must be more pressure on Russia to stop this terror. And that depends on all our partners, the US, Europe, and others around the world. After the last meeting in Saudi Arabia, it has become absolutely clear to the entire world, Russia is the only one dragging this war out, the only one that brought it here, and the only one who needs it to continue.
Today, the talks continued. As we speak, the Russians and the Americans are holding discussions. Afterwards, the Americans will hold talks with the Ukrainians, sort of like a debrief. We are still waiting for statements on those talks. But we can tell you that the focus is on the Black Sea. The US is pushing for a maritime ceasefire. Basically, no attacks on ships or ports. Such a ceasefire was agreed upon in 2022. It was called the Black Sea Grain Initiative. The idea was to allow Ukraine and Russia to stop to ship food grains without fear, to be able to do that without any attacks. The agreement held for almost 1 year, but in 2023, Russia walked out of it. 2 years later, President Trump wants to revive that same deal, and Moscow is game.
In the first place, it is about the safety of ship navigation. But if you remember its initiative previous form, all of its aspects, there was a rather large part about obligations towards our country that were not fulfilled last time.
So that is the first item on the agenda, the Black Sea truce. The second is discussing the line of control. Basically, where do you freeze the front line? Who will monitor that front line? And how will peacekeeping happen? These are some of the contentious issues, but it's not clear if an agreement will be reached. Both sides approach these talks very differently. The Americans were confident of making real progress, but the Kremlin was not. They warned of difficult negotiations ahead. Trump has tasked his Gulf buddy to lead the peace effort. That's Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. He shed some light on President Trump's game plan, on how he intends to end this war. Listen to what he said.
The ultimate goal is a 30-day ceasefire, during which time we discuss a permanent ceasefire. We're not far away from that.
So 30-day ceasefire first, then use that time to strike a permanent deal. That is Donald Trump's game plan. But is he underestimating the challenge? I ask because even the existing truce is in tatters. Last week, Russia and Ukraine agreed to a partial truce. They agreed to not attack energy sites. Yet, Ukraine is striking Russia's energy infrastructure. They say no truce document has been signed, so the attacks are not a violation. And Russia too is escalating. On Sunday, they launched a massive drone attack on Kiev. At least 3 people were killed in that attack. Take a look. This suffering certainly needs to end, and Trump is right to push for peace, but his approach raises a lot of questions. Over the weekend, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff appeared on a podcast. And let me quote some of the things that he said. President Putin had commissioned a beautiful portrait of President Trump from a leading Russian artist and actually gave it to me and asked me to take it home to President Trump, which I brought home and delivered to him. So Putin commissioned a painting of Trump and Witkoff brought it back with him. Here's another quote. When President Trump was shot, Putin went to his local church and met with his priest and prayed for the president, not because he was the president of the United States or could become the president of the United States, but because he had a friendship with him and he was praying for his friend. Witkoff is saying that Putin prayed for Trump. Now, these are significant statements to make, especially in the middle of hectic negotiations. They offer us insights into Trump's equation with Moscow. The American side has considerable trust in Russia. They firmly believe that Putin wants peace. At the same time, they do not have much trust in Ukraine, as evident from last month's Oval Office clash. With such prejudice, can the US be an effective mediator? In an ideal world, perhaps not. But right now, the US is the only Western country talking peace, so let's hope the effort succeeds. In Ukraine, President Trump is pursuing talks, but in West Asia, it's the opposite. He is using the military option. The US began bombing Yemen on March 15th. Their target, the Iran-backed Houthi rebels, and the attack has been relentless. Pentagon officials say they have been bombing every day and every night. One such attack took place on Sunday. The US military has published videos of this operation. They show fighter jets taking off from the Red Sea. Over in Yemen, there was extensive damage. Buildings in the capital Sana'a were struck. At least one person was killed. Take a look. This is the 10th day of the operation. But what is the objective? What is the US hoping to achieve? That was explained by President Trump earlier this month. He wants the Houthis to stop attacking ships. Remember, this was a big problem last year. The Houthis targeted more than 100 ships in the Red Sea. Their goal was to build pressure on Israel and the West to make them stop the war in Gaza. The plan may not have worked, but it completely reshaped global shipping. Shipping firms stopped sailing through the Red Sea. Instead, they took the longer route. They sailed all the way around the African coast. And this adds around 10 days to the voyage. But companies wanted to be safe. President Trump is hoping to rewind these changes. He wants ships to sail through the Red Sea again. Let me quote his national security advisor. This is what he said. 75% of our US flag shipping now has to go around the southern coast of Africa rather than going through the Suez Canal. President Trump has decided to hit the Houthis and hit them hard, as opposed to the last administration where weeks and months would go by with these pinprick attacks. In other words, no half measures. Donald Trump means business. He wants to bring shipping companies back to the Red Sea. A, it will cut down voyage time, and B, it will reduce costs. That is the plan. But are shipping companies ready for this move? Well, none of the big ones are. Danish shipping giant Maersk is not returning to the Red Sea, nor is Hapag-Lloyd or MSC. They will continue sailing around Africa. What they want is a clear signal, maybe a comprehensive peace deal in Gaza or a significant weakening of the Houthis. The US is clearly focused on the second scenario. They want to weaken the Houthis. They have been targeting Houthi leaders and missile sites, yet the group remains defiant. They have launched multiple attacks on American warships. Yesterday, they also fired a ballistic missile at Tel Aviv in Israel. Air raid sirens rang across the city, but the missile was eventually shot down.
The missile force of the Yemeni armed forces targeted Ben Gurion Airport in the occupied Jaffa area with a Palestine to hypersonic ballistic missile. The operation successfully achieved its objective, which led to the suspension of air traffic at the airport for more than half an hour.
So the Houthis are not de-escalating. Of course, Trump could increase the intensity of the strikes, but that too has its downsides. One, more civilian casualties. Already more than 50 people have been killed. A lot of them are women and children. And secondly, it would make the Houthis more dangerous and desperate. The question is, does Donald Trump want to risk that? An easier option is to pursue peace. The Houthis had stopped attacking ships in December last year. After the Gaza truce in January, things were calm. Not even a single incident had been reported. But this month, they threatened to restart the attacks. You see, Israel was blocking aid to Gaza, so the Houthis wanted to build pressure on them. And that's when Trump ordered the strikes. But in this intervening period, things were looking up. In February, around 200 ships passed near the Yemen coast, and this was up from 144 in February last year. But of course, down from the usual 500, which was before the war. So things had slowly started to improve, but now we are back to square one. What happens next depends on multiple factors, like how much escalation is Trump okay with? Will Israel scale back its operation in Gaza? And will the Houthi backers in Iran advise caution? It's certainly not a straightforward situation. On the one hand, you do not want to encourage rogue groups like the Houthis. You give in once, you set a precedent. On the other hand, you don't want to make things worse. It's a delicate situation for President Trump. Let's see how he navigates it. As the US projects air power in West Asia, it is also preparing for future conflicts. And leading the charge is, of course, Donald Trump. The president wants a new toy for his Air Force, a shiny, costly, stealthy, brand new fighter jet. Trump unveiled his plans over the weekend and awarded the contract to Boeing. Boeing will now make America's next cutting-edge jet. It will be designated the F-47, where the F stands for fighter and 47 is for the 47th President of the United States, which happens to be Donald Trump. You just can't miss the coincidence. The aircraft will be made under a program called the NGAD. It stands for Next Generation Air Dominance Fighter, NGAD. It will give the US Air Force its first sixth-generation stealth fighter jet. Donald Trump believes it will change air combat forever and give America the edge in the battlefield. Here's what he said.
The F-47 will be the most advanced, most capable, most lethal aircraft ever built. An experimental version of the plane has secretly been flying for almost 5 years, and we're confident that it massively overpowers the capabilities of any other nation. There's no other nation. We know every other plane. I've seen every one of them, and it's not even close. This is a next level.
Trump said the aircraft has been flying for 5 years. So why is it being unveiled now? You see, the NGAD program was approved in 2014. But the Biden administration put a halt on the project, and the reason was quite simple. The sixth-gen stealth jet will burn holes in America's pockets. Boeing needs $20 billion just to kickstart the work. And look at the cost of each aircraft, upwards of $300 million. Let me spell that out for you again. $300 million for one single jet. That's more than the GDP of some countries, making it the costliest weapon ever. As of today, the American-made F-35 stealth jet holds that title. the costliest. One aircraft costs about $80 million, but each F-47 would cost more than 3 times more. And yet, not much is known about it. Initial designs show the aircraft with large wings, a tailless body adding to its stealth, and canards for agility. The US Air Force plans to induct the F-47 in 5 years, and Boeing's secretive team called Phantom Works will manufacture the aircraft. For Trump, this is all good optics. A new fighter jet under his presidency sits well for his America First image. And secondly, Trump has given Boeing its biggest lifeline yet. You see, Boeing has been on a downward spiral. We've been telling you about this. Passenger plane crashes, faulty parts, quality control issues, and delayed deliveries of the presidential jet, the Air Force One. These are just some of the issues plaguing Boeing. Apart from losing public trust, of course, the aerospace firm has lost its biggest customer, the US military, until Trump 2.0 happened. Now the contract has gone to Boeing, ending the reign of its main competitor, Lockheed Martin. Until now, Lockheed Martin was the sole contractor for making stealth fighter jets in the West. It was a monopoly. In 2005, it gave America the F-22 Raptor, and 10 years later, it rolled out the F-35 Lightning. This jet is now operated across NATO. It was made by Lockheed Martin, but this time, Boeing trumped Lockheed Martin. And the reaction was quick. Lockheed Martin stock plunged by more than 5%, and Boeing stocks gained by more than 3%. The markets are showing trust in Boeing, at least for now, but can it deliver? It doesn't have the luxury of time. The F-47 is supposed to replace the F-22. The F-22 is America's best fighter jet. It is more than 2 decades old now. The US is the only country that still operates the F-22. There are almost 190 aircraft in service, so Boeing has to bring in the new jet soon. Because geopolitics is changing fast, and Trump believes the threat from China is growing. With the West busy with the war in Ukraine, Beijing has been on a modernizing spree. In December last year, China unveiled not one, but 2 tailless stealth jets, 2 jets, the J-36 and the J-50. China claims they are 6th generation aircraft. But China is also known for its exaggerated PR, so its claim remains questionable. Nonetheless, Washington is feeling the heat, and the F-47 is Trump's answer to China. Of course, the big question is, can he pull it off? He wants the jet to enter service before he leaves the White House. He's worried that the next administration could slam the brakes because of the cost. Like I said, each jet costs more than $300 million. That's a lot of money. On the other hand, China has unveiled 2 6th-generation prototypes. It's now a scramble for the skies. Which side will blink first? Will the F-47 retain America's dominance as the threat from China grows? And most importantly, can Boeing even pull this off? We'll be tracking. As Donald Trump prepares for the Chinese threat, Washington's allies are raising the alarm about Trump's America. Canada, Denmark, Finland, Germany, and the United Kingdom, they've all issued travel advisories for the US. They're all warning their nationals from visiting the United States. The reason? Trump's crackdown on immigration and transgender rights. It has hit European travelers. Many of them were detained and deported by US immigration officials. Of course, it's not just Europeans that are bracing for impact. Trump plans to deport more than 500,000 migrants. These are people from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. 500,000. He wants to send them back. They were living in the US on humanitarian grounds. Trump has given them 1 month to pack their bags and leave. Here's our report.
The American Dream, a term coined by historian James Truslow Adams in 1931, was the driving factor for millions of people to flock to the United States in pursuit of a better life. For decades, people from around the world gave it their all to enter the United States, and the dash for the dream peaked in recent years, with illegal migration hitting record-breaking numbers. Until Donald Trump returned to the White House. Trump has cracked down on migration with a heavy hand.
Absolutely.
He has ordered the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, to detain and deport all illegal migrants. There are currently over 11 million illegal migrants in the country who are now staring at an uncertain future. But travel to the United States has become unsafe for valid visa holders as well. Denmark, Finland, the United Kingdom, Germany and Canada are warning their nationals about visiting Trump's America. They are urging travellers to strictly adhere to all rules for entry, and there's a reason for that. The warnings come after several European travellers were detained and deported by US immigration officials. But there's more. The advisories also warn about the State Department's crackdown on trans rights. Both Denmark and Finland have flagged Trump's executive order recognizing only two genders and the removal of the non-binary X marker on passports. Meanwhile, Canada, Britain and Germany reported that their nationals were arrested and deported by ICE agents who cited visa violations. But reports suggest that some detentions were based on phone messages being critical of Trump and social media support for pro-Hamas protests in the United States. A travel advisory for the United States is not uncommon. However, it was majorly issued for gun violence. But this time the threat is deportations, and it's not just Europeans who are facing the heat. Because Trump plans to carry out the largest single operation deportation yet. The White House is ending the legal status of more than 500,000 migrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua and Venezuela. The US Department of Homeland Security has ended the humanitarian parole program for select countries. This program allows people to temporarily enter the United States for humanitarian reasons, and it allows the asylum seekers to legally reside and work in the country for 2 years. It's the same program that allowed entry to current Secretary of State Marco Rubio's parents into the United States in 1956. But times have changed, and the parole seekers from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua and Venezuela will now have to leave the United States. The Trump administration has given them a 30-day ultimatum. Immigration officials cite that only those migrants who have overstayed their parole are being sent back, and that the program is not being scrapped for now. Cuba, Haiti and Venezuela have begun accepting the deportations.
And today we are receiving 199 compatriots in the same conditions as the first flight. Venezuela and the world know that we are not accomplices of any type of crime, and what we are not going to do is condemn Venezuelans just because that is the narrative they want to impose. If someone comes at the request of a country's police agencies, the prosecutor's office, or the organs of justice, they will be processed in that way. But if it's anyone who has absolutely nothing to do with crime, that person will go home once and for all without any inconvenience.
For now, the deportations of humanitarian parolees is being challenged in court. A group of Americans and immigrants have sued the White House. However, the Trump administration is no longer accepting applications for asylum. With deportations now in full swing, Donald Trump is working toward his campaign promises of sending back illegal migrants. While South America prepares to take back thousands of deportees, Europeans are rethinking their travel to the United States, fearing being clubbed with the deportees despite having valid visas. It looks like very few are welcome in Trump's America.
Now let's look at Turkey, where public anger is rising, crowds are swelling, and the calls to oust President Recep Tayyip Erdogan are becoming impossible to ignore. Take a look at this first. Tens of thousands, perhaps over 100,000, gathered in Istanbul, outside the city's municipal headquarters. That's the seat of Istanbul's mayor. They gathered there because the mayor has been arrested. It started on Wednesday with an early morning raid. Istanbul's mayor, Ekrem İmamoğlu, was arrested on charges of corruption and aiding terrorism. As it happens, İmamoğlu is Erdogan's main political rival, the person with the best chance at defeating the Turkish president. İmamoğlu was picked up on Wednesday, and that sparked the mass demonstrations you've been seeing. The biggest protest in Turkey since 2013. This is despite a nationwide ban on public gatherings and despite a crackdown by the police. More than 1,100 people have already been arrested for protesting. But clearly the crackdown has failed to thin out the crowd. The Turkish people are furious. They aren't backing down. Let me take you through what happened on Sunday. The day began with a vote, a largely ceremonial vote to decide on the opposition's presidential candidate. There was only one name on the ballot, Ekrem İmamoğlu. He was the only one, and it was supposed to be just for members of his party, the Republican People's Party, or the CHP. But they opened up the poll to all Turkish people, and the support came flooding in. The party says 15 million people voted for İmamoğlu, irrespective of party membership, irrespective of political affiliation. This was a symbolic vote. Even those who did not support İmamoğlu voted for him. They basically voted against Erdogan and his authoritarian tactics.
I am very upset. This is no longer just a problem for the Republican People's Party, but a problem for Turkish democracy. We do not accept our rights being so easily usurped. We will fight until the end. İmamoğlu is trusted by us, and we are with him.
While this was happening, while the people were making him their opposition leader, İmamoğlu was being packed off to a prison, the Marmara prison on the outskirts of Istanbul. It is said to be both Turkey's and Europe's largest prison complex. That's where İmamoğlu was transported, and he will stay in this jail while he's being tried. I told you he's accused of corruption and terrorism, but he has not been found guilty yet. He is still awaiting trial, but the Turkish judiciary has decided to keep him locked up. The Turkish people are not happy about this, which explains the outpouring of anger yesterday and the giant crowd that gathered in Istanbul. Take a look at this. Protesters gathering by the hundreds near an ancient Roman aqueduct, close to the city hall building that you saw earlier. The protesters were face to face with the riot police, who decided to douse them with pepper spray. Yes, those fire extinguisher type things that you see, those are pepper spray dispensers. The police was charging forward and covering the protesters in that stuff. So obviously there was pushback. Some protesters chose the high ground. They sang and danced in front of the police. They showed heart signs and peace signs and proudly displayed the face of the country's founder, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, the architect of modern Turkey. Other demonstrators were not as calm. They tossed fireworks at the riot police and clashed with them, giving the police the perfect excuse to detain these people. As I said, over 1,100 people have been arrested already, and the number is almost certain to go up. Among the arrested are journalists. They are being rounded up from their houses or detained at the protests. The police are reportedly smashing their equipment. Why? Apparently for showing the world what is going on. Erdogan does not seem to want all of this getting out. His government is stifling social media as well. They have suspended about 700 accounts on X, formerly Twitter. 700 accounts suspended. The Turkish government really does not want the momentum to spread. Erdogan is doing everything he can to stifle dissent. He has even called the protesters street terrorists.
Cesaretiniz varsa bırakın demokrasi işlesin, bırakın hukuk işlesin. Yüreğiniz yetiyorsa bırakın mahkemeler hiçbir baskı altında kalmadan Türk milleti adına kararını versin.
Erdogan says the protesters are going against the national will. He says the days of street demonstrations are over. They are part of the old Turkey. Well, by the looks of it, thousands of people do not like his new Turkey, and they aren't afraid to take to the streets and say so. Are there enough of them? Will they be able to get Erdogan to back down, or will the protests fizzle out like he wants? We'll find out in the days ahead. We've come a long way in the digital age. Just a decade ago, buffering videos tested our patience. Today, we stream in 4K. We make instant video calls and control smart homes with a tap. So what is next? 6G, a technology that won't just connect us faster, but in ways we've never imagined. Holographic conversations, real-time AI assistants, and an internet more powerful than ever. It will all be just a tap away. But with great power comes great competition. Countries and tech giants are in a fierce race to lead the 6G revolution. So who's ahead? Who's falling behind? Where does India feature in this race? And most importantly, how will this impact you? Our next report tells you.
Imagine a world where you could talk to your best friend as a hologram. Cars could drive themselves perfectly, and doctors could perform surgeries via robots. Sounds like a sci-fi movie, right? Well, that's what 6G promises to bring to life. If 5G was like upgrading from a bicycle to a sports car, then 6G is like getting a spaceship. It will be faster, it will be smarter, and it will connect us in ways that are unimaginable right now. So what exactly is 6G? It stands for 6th Generation Wireless Technology. Think of your internet as a highway. Right now with 5G, we have wide, fast roads where many cars can travel quickly, but there's still some traffic sometimes. And not everything moves perfectly. 6G will be like building bigger highways, that too in the sky. Cars will fly and never get stuck. 6G uses super high-frequency signals called terahertz waves. They can send data incredibly fast, up to 1 terabit per second. That is 1,000 times faster than 5G. It's so fast that you could download an entire movie in just 1 second. Most importantly, 6G will connect everything, not just phones and computers, but also homes, cars, factories, and even entire cities. So who is leading the race? China has the lead right now. In March this year, Beijing released its national development goals. Cultivating the 6G industry is one of them. It's conducted successful satellite-to-ground laser communication tests that achieved data transmission rates of 100 gigabits per second. It has set technological standards for 6G. Major companies like Huawei and ZTE are also heavily involved. The government has also established a national working group focused on 6G. It provides funding for such ventures. So China clearly has the head start. But the West is moving slower than usual. The US is pursuing initiatives like the Next G Alliance. It aims to secure a prominent position in 6G development. Europe anticipates that standardization work for 6G will begin around this year. Companies like Qualcomm, Nokia, and AT&T are involved in research. But most experts believe that the West is a step behind. They want to make the most out of 5G before jumping into 6G. So where does India feature in this race? The government has a big plan called Bharat 6G Vision. It aims to make the country a key player in this new technology. Here are 3 things India is already doing. 1. Investing in research. Universities and tech companies are working together to develop 6G solutions. 2. Partnering with other countries. India has teamed up with Japan and Finland. This is to share knowledge and build 6G together. 3rd, encouraging Indian companies. Reliance Jio and Bharti Airtel are getting ready to take part in the global 6G race. So, what does the road ahead look like? If all goes well, 6G will officially launch by 2030. But here's the big question. How will it change your life? Will 6G create a future where we're more connected than ever? Or will it bring new challenges we haven't even imagined yet? One thing's for sure, the 6G race has begun. And the winner won't just shape technology, they'll shape the future of the world.
There's a reset brewing in Kabul between two bitter battlefield enemies, the Taliban and the United States. There's a lot of buzz around President Trump's approach. He doesn't brand regimes as enemies or friends. He simply sees a transaction. And looks like that approach may benefit the Taliban. Because reports say the US is thinking about reopening its Kabul embassy. If true, this would be massive. Like most countries, the US shut its Afghan embassy in 2021. That's when the Taliban captured power in Kabul. And since then, only a few have reopened. The likes of Pakistan, Russia, India, China and Iran. But looks like Trump wants to do the same. And it's not an isolated move. It's part of a larger shift by the US government. Last week, an American delegation traveled to Kabul. It was led by Adam Boehler. He's a hostage negotiator at the White House. Also part of the team was Zalmay Khalilzad. He served as Trump's Afghan envoy in the first term. After 2021, he slipped into the shadows, but now he's back. Khalilzad and Boehler secured the release of an American jailed in Afghanistan. The US called it a constructive step, sort of like a goodwill measure. And what did the Taliban get in return? Perhaps some bounty relief. The Taliban's interior minister is Sirajuddin Haqqani. He heads the dreaded Haqqani network. It's a terror group / faction of the Taliban. Until recently, the US had a bounty for Haqqani, $10 million in exchange for a tip-off. But Kabul says that bounty has been lifted. The State Department website does not list it anymore, but the FBI website still does. So there's some confusion. Nonetheless, it's important. The Taliban clearly see an opening here, because they have dealt with Donald Trump before. In 2020, he negotiated America's withdrawal from Afghanistan. He also set the August 2021 deadline. That deal and that deadline led to the Taliban's comeback in Kabul. So Donald Trump is a known entity for them. Someone who does not look at ideals or values. Instead, he looks at strategy. It is the perfect chance for the Taliban to make inroads, to reduce their isolation. But what's in it for the US president? Mainly two things. One, a bulwark against the Islamic State. The US is betting that the Taliban will contain the terror threat. It's like asking the thief to guard the treasure. But Trump is risking it anyway. That is one thing. Second, to protect against Chinese advances. Beijing has built close ties to the Taliban. Last year, they recognized the group's ambassador to Beijing, the first ever country to do so, to recognize the Taliban ambassador. China is also eyeing Afghanistan's resources. They're valued at almost $1 trillion. This includes 1.4 million tons of rare earth minerals. In Afghanistan, 1.4 million tons, like lithium used for batteries. China is keen to mine and process these rare earths, and Donald Trump does not want to be left behind. I mean, he's mining Ukraine in the middle of a war, so I'm sure Afghanistan is not a problem for him. This engagement also has ramifications for the region, especially for Pakistan. Islamabad is trying to convince Trump that the Taliban are terror sponsors. And what does Trump do? Move closer to the very same Taliban. It's very different from the 1980s and the 1990s. Back then, Pakistan was the middleman between Washington and Kabul, but Trump wants to deal directly. And what about India? How does this outreach affect India? Well, New Delhi has been deploying the same logic. It has not embraced the Taliban regime, but it has accepted the ground reality in Afghanistan. Today, the Indian embassy is operational in Kabul. We do not have a full-fledged diplomatic team, but we do have a technical one. Beyond that, it's hard to draw conclusions. A stable Afghanistan is certainly in India's interest, but a powerful Taliban, perhaps not. We'll have to wait and see how far Trump goes, whether these small moves amount to a big reset. Our next story is about Greenland. The island is about to get some controversial visitors soon. A high-level delegation from the United States. Leading the group will be Usha Vance, the US Second Lady, wife of Vice President J.D. Vance. Along with Usha Vance will be the US National Security Advisor Mike Waltz and US Energy Secretary Chris Wright. Now, normally a visit like this may have been an honor, but right now it's drawing condemnation. As you know, US President Donald Trump wants to take over Greenland. He wants to make it part of America, irrespective of what Greenlanders themselves want. So this visit by Usha Vance is being seen as highly provocative. Here's our report.
The US Second Lady, Usha Vance, is making a trip soon. On Thursday, she's going to land in Greenland. Apparently to soak in the historical sites, learn about Greenlandic heritage, and attend a dog sled race. She even put out a video to hype up her trip.
Hello. I'm so excited to share that I'll be visiting Kalaalleq, Greenland, next weekend. I'm particularly thrilled to visit during our national dog sled race, which our country is proud to support as a sponsor. I've been reading all about it with my children, and I'm amazed by the incredible skill and teamwork that it takes to participate in this race. I'm also coming to celebrate the long history of mutual respect and cooperation between our nations, and to express hope that our relationship will only grow stronger in the coming years. I look forward to meeting many of you soon, and to learning from you about your beautiful land, culture, and traditions. See you soon.
She said she's coming to celebrate the long history of mutual respect and cooperation between Greenland and the US. Normally, this would have been taken as a standard pleasantry. But not these days, because of US President Donald Trump. For months, Trump has been saying he wants to take over Greenland, by force if necessary. He says it is critical for the US to control Greenland for the safety of the entire free world. Then there's the US Vice President, Usha Vance's husband, J.D. J.D. Vance caused an uproar yesterday by saying that Trump would take more territorial interest in Greenland and he doesn't care about what the Europeans yell at the US. Trump has spoken about taking Greenland over multiple times. Some lawmakers from his Republican Party have even proposed legislation like this, the Make Greenland Great Again Act and the Red, White and Blue Land Act of 2025. Both bills would empower Trump to try and buy Greenland, even if Greenlanders themselves don't want to join the US. Now, in this context, Trump's proclamations, the Republican Party's colorful new acts, and J.D. Vance's defiant posturing, look at this part of Usha Vance's speech again.
I'm also coming to celebrate the long history of mutual respect and cooperation between our nations, and to express hope that our relationship will only grow stronger in the coming years.
She wants the relationship to grow stronger. Perhaps that isn't the best thing to say right now, when the US president wants to take over Greenland. So it's no surprise that the people of Greenland are angry about Usha Vance's visit. Greenland's outgoing Prime Minister, Mute Iged, has called the trip highly aggressive. He is especially critical about US National Security Advisor Mike Waltz being a part of the delegation. He believes it's an American ploy to demonstrate power over Greenland. Iged is stepping down as Prime Minister soon, but his likely successor holds similar views. He says the timing of the visit shows a lack of respect. Usha Vance may be taking in the sights and culture, but the other American visitors are going to a US military base. The optics aren't great. Greenlanders are angry, and so is Denmark, because Greenland is a Danish autonomous territory. A threat to Greenland is a threat to Danish sovereignty. Denmark's Prime Minister has put out a statement as well. She says her country is taking the visit seriously. Denmark has flown 60 police officers to Greenland in a bid to increase security ahead of Usha Vance's trip. It might also be intended as a message. But Denmark can hardly compete with the US when it comes to forces. The US sent 2 Hercules military aircraft to Greenland yesterday. They left later in the day, but it shows that the US has the firepower to back Trump's imperialistic visions. That move probably didn't do much to calm nerves. Let's hope that Usha Vance's visit doesn't make things worse.
Have you heard of water cooler television? It's not some fancy new streaming buzzword. It is peak office gossip culture from the mid-2000s. Here's the story of its origin. You watch a mind-blowing show at night. It takes over your brain. You can't think about anything else. The next day, you beeline for the water cooler. You and your co-workers break it all down. Plot twists, theories, everything. That's water cooler TV. Think Friends and Game of Thrones. They are the ultimate poster children for this. But TV has since changed. Now we binge an entire series in a day, half watching, half scrolling. So today, water cooler TV just means any show you can't stop talking about. Most platforms have cracked this formula, but one still hasn't. And that is Apple TV Plus. That's Apple's streaming service. It loses $1 billion every year. Why is that? What is Apple doing wrong? And what does it mean for the streaming wars? Apple TV Plus was launched in 2019. Every year it spends about $5 billion on content. Apple has a lot going for it, a roster of A-list talent, some of the highest production values, and a handful of critically acclaimed hits. So on paper, it should be a success story, yet it is losing $1 billion every single year. Why is that? There are a few reasons for this, of course. The first is their marketing strategy. For Apple, it is surprisingly muted. Trailers often drop last minute. Social media campaigns are dull. This fails to generate the much-needed cultural momentum. So that is one problem. The second is an identity problem. You see, most streaming platforms have figured out their niche. You go to Netflix to binge watch. You go to HBO for critically acclaimed shows. What do you go to Apple TV Plus for? Is it prestige TV? Is it family friendly? Is it experimental? No one seems to know. And the last problem is accessibility. Apple TV Plus lacks a strong pull. People aren't subscribing just for it. They're getting it as an afterthought. When they buy an Apple device, Apple TV Plus has 45 million subscribers. Netflix has 300 million. Prime Video has 200 million. So clearly Apple TV Plus is seen as an add-on. And it's not just Apple that is struggling here. Streaming, as we know, has changed in the last few years. Business models have evolved. Viewer preferences have changed. There's more interest in live sports. Regional content is all the rage. So streaming platforms have had to change tack. Again, take Netflix, for example. It used to drop entire seasons at once, but now Netflix is experimenting. There are staggered releases, advertisements, live sports, and a crackdown on password sharing. Netflix is constantly changing the game, and it shows in their numbers. In 2023, it earned $33 billion. It went up to $39 billion in 2024, which is a 15.6% increase in revenue. Then there's Amazon Prime Video. It is commissioning lesser movies and TV shows. It is investing more in live sports. It is chasing broadcasting rights. Customers don't even have to get the full subscription. They can just rent a single movie or just pay for the one TV show that they want to watch. So Prime too is evolving, which is why it hopes to be profitable this year. Then there's Disney Plus. It is going back to the basics. Disney is leaning into core franchisees, the likes of Star Wars, Marvel, and Pixar. It wants to leverage its intellectual property. Any underperforming content is immediately cancelled. What does all of this tell you? The streaming landscape is shifting. The days of infinite growth are over. Now it is about sustainability and retention. Where does that leave Apple TV Plus? In a streaming landscape where everyone is pivoting, Apple seems stagnant. It has great content but no buzz, a massive budget but no distinct identity, a built-in audience but no urgency to watch. And that's the real problem. Streaming wars aren't just about who spends the most money, they're about who commands the most attention. Netflix, Amazon, Disney, they aren't evolving to stay relevant. They are rather evolving to stay relevant. Apple may be playing the long game here, but if it doesn't adapt, it may not have a game left to play. Here's the thing about picking fights. You better be able to back it up. If not, be prepared for an onslaught of insults. Just ask the Americans. Their president has been picking fights with Canada and Europe, but his country has been humbled by eggs. That's right. A severe bird flu outbreak has caused egg shortage in America, so Trump is trying to import eggs. First, he reached out to Poland, Finland and Denmark. All three of them said no. And frankly, I don't understand Denmark's reluctance. Why would you not sell eggs to America? It's not like Trump is trying to annex your island territory. The internet is having a blast with America's egg plight. Take a look. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Cherry blossom season officially begins in Tokyo. Crowds cheer as Pope Francis makes his first public appearance in weeks. And an eyewitness video captures a deadly plane crash during an air show in South Africa. Finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 1999, NATO bombed Yugoslavia. This was the first time the military alliance attacked a sovereign country without a UN mandate. The bombings led to Yugoslavia's military withdrawal from Kosovo, but it was seen as a violation of international law. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Granaty na stronie zloczynaczkie NATO Alliance most je pogodzien za 2 projekty.